I filmed it this weekend, and they said, "We're gonna go drive to Bergdorf." I said, "Really? How are you gonna get there?" I went, "What?" No, CSAS isn't open until Memorial Day.
We're live, Mr. Chairman.
We've
Ready now?
Yes, sir.
That was fun.
Okay, thanks Jeremy for your help. We're back to our 25th meeting. Our next agenda item is a presentation from National Forest District Ranger Dave Hogan. And appreciate you guys being here, coming in and checking in with us every quarter, so it's great.
Appreciate the opportunity. Yep. So, like you said, I'm Dave Hogan, District Ranger, Crossville Ranger District. I'll you guys introduce yourself.
I'm Dave Vining, the Fire Staff Officer.
I'm Jenny Blake, the McCall District Ranger.
So, what we were hoping to bring to your attention today would be we have a couple items related to recreation here in Valley County, and then also we want to talk a little bit about pre-season fire, wildland fire preparedness. And I don't know if you're going to touch on prescribed fire or not, but anytime I like to talk to folks about wildland fire, I also like to talk about fuel treatments and prescribed fire because they definitely go hand in hand. So one of the things I just wanted to bring to your attention, it just came out in a news release. I thought maybe I'd get here before it hit the streets, but if you had some questions, we'll be able to talk about that. We've had quite a interest for recreation events on the Payette National Forest, and they come in at different times, and if they come in late, right before something they want to do in the summer, it just doesn't give us enough time to really review that proposal and then give that proponent an opportunity to get some feedback and then tell them yes or no. And so it gets really tight. And so we looked at our schedule and we looked at what some of our other experiences with handling and managing recreation events. And we said if we have a window when people apply, we can get those, we can screen them, we can give advance notice, and then they could go have their event. And so we're moving forward with a window, and it's August 1 through September 15. That would be for the winter and spring events that maybe people are doing. Maybe they have some type of a snowmobile event that they want to put on. It could be a lot of different things that happen in the winter and the spring. So August 1st through September 15th, they
So
apply.
during that time, they can apply.
They would apply.
So it wouldn't
they're
be, they
interested.
can't apply now for next year.
If they wanted to
Within
put
that
it in, they could put it in and we could hold it too. We had a little discussion on that. I mean, double advance notice is not a bad thing. So it's just that would be best time for that winter, spring. And then for the summer, fall, November 1 through February 15th. So we missed that window for this coming one. We're kind of in the, I don't know how many, I shouldn't say if we're I don't know, are we holding hard and fast? I thought it was
Not
more
right
this,
now.
this,
Right.
this.
I'm sorry, give me the second dates.
So for next summer, it'd be November 1 through February 15th. So really the one that we're looking to get started would be this August 1st through September 15th for the winter, spring. And then when it goes into the November 1 through February 15th, it'd be trying to plan for next summer, fall. So if there's something somebody had planned to do, sooner we can get it, the better, because we're already kind of getting late to actually be able to approve like a 100-person running event that they're going to have entry fees and run a course, or a mountain bike event, or an ATV jamboree, or whatever it would be. Sooner they can get those now, we'd still do our best to fit it in, and then these time frames will start this fall, and then in the winter start doing it.
We
Are
might be
you
able,
getting more requests? So I mean, a lot more groups wanting to use the force every year.
Jenny's probably the busiest unit, and that's a yes.
Yes, I mean, we have some recurrent recreation events, like the I Am Tough Run, and we've been working with them. We're actually looking in the future, maybe just giving them a 5-year permit so we don't have to redo this every year. But last year we had 3 or 4 different people submit, and either it's too late, or they don't have enough information, or they really don't know what they're doing, and
We have that happen all the time.
Right, and similarly, part of our role is to make sure it's a safe, well done event. We're saying that this is something that we believe is a good product or whatever. And last year we had a couple proposals that didn't deal with sanitation, and didn't really. So we denied those. But this will give us the opportunity and enough time to work with those proponents to really review those.
You guys have a PR release, we might be able to push that out also, just to put it out onto all of our social media and add it to our website. A lot of people go to ours looking for your guys' information too, thinking we're all one.
Yeah.
I can forward that on to you. And come through. I know Brian sent it out pretty wide. It may hit, maybe it was in the Star News, the night. Might be coming here pretty quick if it didn't make it yet, but I'll send that to you. Perfect. So that's one, to try to get ahead of this and try to have more predictable time of the year when those applications will come in. The other thing that I wanted to bring to your attention that we're working on and moving forward with would be dispersed camping length of stay. So right now, outside of the wilderness, so inside the wilderness is 14 days, but outside of the wilderness, it's 18 days that you can stay at one spot and not move your camp. What we're finding, just with lots of interest to come here and camp, people are going out to the woods and not as able to find places to camp, especially once again in McCall district and right around McCall. It's a little bit easier, probably the further away you get from McCall, but it's still a challenge in New Meadows. It's still a challenge outside of council. It's still a challenge even around Yellow Pine. And so we'd go from that 18-day to a 14-day, and then you'd have to move. It's pretty much in line with a bunch of others in the state. We were kind of an outlier. So in some ways it'd be more consistent, but also it just is responding to it's out there and changing over those sites a little bit more frequently.
You guys talked about a system that was camping on that outside, so that you go back there after a couple of weeks and stuff.
Yeah. So
Go back to those folks and say, hey,
yeah, so we have, there's kind of a couple different ways that we, forest protection officers, so those are Forest Service employees that have that role, and they get trained in that role, and they're out there making contacts with the public and also doing their best to keep an eye on some of those problem areas, and then educate first, and then, you know, it can go to something beyond education if it's warranted. Then we also have our law enforcement officers that are also keep an eye. We just happened to have one starting today here on the pay out of McCall.
so
So
you have two LEOs.
we have Brian Hart out of the kind of Council Weezer area, and then
Stacy
Stacy.
Luck.
Stacy Lochner.
Yeah.
Just started today. And so those are the main ones. We also have folks in our recreation departments that are, you know, making pretty frequent travels in the woods, and they'll keep an eye on them. It's a challenge though, because there's a lot more campers in a lot more places than we have people checking.
We feel your concern.
Yeah, so I mean, that's how we try to keep up with it. I mean, I keep an eye when I go to the woods. If I see something that looks the same, I'll then pull over, take a photo of what's sitting there, and then see it again, or I kind of pass it on to those folks and say, hey, have you paid attention to this? And sometimes they'll leave and then they'll come back weeks later, and they will be in the same spot.
That's what I was gonna ask about enforcement. So you have added an enforcement officer.
Yeah,
Enforcement's always fun.
we replaced one. We had one there, but I mean, the good thing is it wasn't like years between, you know, replacing. So we were fortunate to get somebody to come call law enforcement. She just started today, and she'll be getting integrated quickly. And then we have decided as a forest to fill some of our summer seasonal positions with permanent recreation appointments.
Good, that's good news.
That hopefully will lead to some consistency and, you know, not hiring every couple of years, but maybe we'll get some to stick a little bit longer. And
Well, it's amazing too, the amount of people that are living in the woods all summer.
you know,
And, you know, somebody, they're working, dad's working somewhere, and they just come up here. Yeah, I know, I've been exposed to the Clear Creek area quite a bit, because we have a ditch that starts up there. And those people have been there, you can tell, for months.
Right.
I mean, they have everything. Kind of crazy.
Yeah, we've got quite a few of them already moved in around Little Lake. I know that's not forest land, but happens every year, and that's another area of that state land that I think is of particular concern, almost up there with Cougar Island, but I don't know.
Well, and I wonder if we'll ever see the day where the state will kind of help, kind of like the GNA stuff, but for recreation. Is there state land and Forest Service land, and of course, private land, you have more control over that, but, and work together. That's everybody's property. I think it works best.
Right, we've talked about that just a little bit with shared stewardship and, you know, it's, shared stewardship has been focused on more vegetation, but also it has been discussed having some recreation. And possibly with Granite Meadows, we might be able to talk about some of
Well, I do know that our plan, and maybe Larry's talking about this, is we've acquired leases on Betsy Wallace and Green Gate, some of those, and we're gonna try and offer summer camping as well. And so hopefully that'll pull some of that relief off the forest and state. Give another place for people to go there. I've always felt from day one, if we don't build it, we don't provide it, they're gonna build it where you don't want them to. But we're dealing with that all the time.
And we do have a new planner. Dave just started his position today, so we will be working on a master plan for recreation in this area, which obviously would involve. So,
And I think a lot of that's gonna entail some access issues through you guys and through state, and some long-term loop kind of stuff that we really need to think about building, because if we don't, we're gonna destroy it, but we're gonna want it. So hoping everybody will be at the table when we get to that point.
I look forward to it.
Me too.
So the last one I'll touch on, and it's one I've brought before the commission before, is the East Fork South Fork Salmon River Restoration and Access Management Plan. So that's the third one of the ramp projects.
Right.
Big Creek to South Fork to the East Fork to the South Fork. So we are getting closer to releasing a draft EA out for comment, but we're still taking our parts and pieces from the draft analysis from our specialists on our interdisciplinary team and moving that into a draft environmental assessment that then the public and all take another detailed look instead of kind of a big picture look that we went out to scoping. And so we had hoped to have that end of this month or into May, and we have there is a staffing area on the force that's gotten a little bit tighter in the last, 6 months, and it's our environmental coordinators, and they're kind of our wranglers of putting all those parts and pieces together. And so we went from multiple staff to down to 0, I think, starting today on the forest. And so we still got a couple of them will still help us out a little bit while they're doing their new duties, and we'll try to keep the top priorities moving. We'll get some interest in people filling behind and for those jobs.
And they're pretty important because I think it's a great liaison with all the groups, especially for the coalitions. The Boise Coalition, we're on our third person to manage that function, and people come and go there, but it's as important as all the other positions.
Right. Yeah. You get kind of stuck in when you have some vacancies, and you got to get creative of working with neighbors and working with our regional office or contracting something or even looking outside of our agency for help. And it's one we're keep the East Fork South Fork ramp project moving forward, but say until that draft EA is out to the public, I don't really have a lot more specifics, but it's getting closer.
Good. And just so you know, since you're on the East Fork, is our road supervisors out there today working on that road. They're gonna be out there for maybe a week or so, trying to clean borrow pits and put the crown back, and then they're gonna head towards Johnson Creek, but I'm sure it's still snowed in at the top, so at least trying to get down to Wapiti and get some of the holes out of that road.
We sent a grader out on Friday, pretty sure it was Thursday of last week to bump rocks and the South Fork for our chunk of it. This time of year, so we're trying to keep up with it, but it's a never ending bit of a challenge. Then Jenny, I think you got a couple more on
Yeah.
your neck of the woods?
Just a couple projects. So like Dave was saying, our environmental coordinator for the Crassel and McCall finished on Friday, but before she left, we got the Bear Basin Trails decision signed. So, and it was not exactly the action. We really listened to some of the comments. One area where we were proposing to do a relocation, we got a response from Fish and Game that there were great gray owls that were in that area, so we decided not to move that trail. And then the other trail that we received a lot of comments on, and we're not prepared to do it, was the trail that went from the 452 into kind of the cuts off the road section, and it's a little boggy there, so we were going to decommission it. So we just dropped that from the decision, and we'll look at a future time looking at doing some sort of relocation. But then the rest of the project is the same as before. So that's exciting. So we'll be able to actually sign the trails and do, So yeah, and then a couple other projects that we have coming up in the future. One is called North Fork Payette Divide, which is kind of focusing on that dispersed recreation. And that's up by Trapper Cabin, by like French Creek Trailhead, Center Ridge Trailhead, off road the 260. And we're looking at essentially defining a better trailhead, defining some areas for dispersed camping as opposed to having just people go everywhere, doing some hazard tree removal around Trapper Cabin and doing some interp and narrowing up the trail so we're not having vehicles drive in and right to the cabin, things like that.
Is that gonna be a 50-inch motorized? Is that?
Well, the trail is already, it's a two-wheel motorized, so we're not changing the status of the trail at all. So all those trails out of that area are two-wheel motorized. But it's really just trying to prevent the continued going into the meadow, and also just trying to harden it and make it a better experience. So we just started on that project. Scoping will be out, probably another month or so, or depending on if we can get it done without an environmental coordinator. So, but we will be looking at that this year. And part of that too may include, so some of the hazard tree removal may include some either commercial firewood or something to deal with the trees that we do remove. And then any questions on that from?
Yeah, Jenny, I'm really happy to hear you're working on that particular trailhead.
Yes, I know that's near and dear to you.
Is that motorized bicycle
That
and
really needs some
everything
work.
right now? I mean, it's,
Two-
you're so,
two-wheel
Two-wheel motorized.
That's where Dave's gonna ride all summer. You been on that trail?
Oh, yeah.
Good trail.
Yeah, the problem with that, the French Creek Trail is that it dead ends at the bottom because we don't have access through private property, which would someday, it would be great to get that, but we don't have a willing person at this point. Another project that we're looking at, and we're really at preliminary stages. We kind of thought we were all set to do it, but then had some comments from some of our internal folks. But looking at Hartley Meadows, there's a pretty significant route right through the middle, and it's not open to motorized. So we're trying to figure out a plan to first we were just going to decommission that road or that route, and now we're not. We're gonna look. We may still decommission that route, but we need to figure out more of a plan to figure out, how do we keep people out of the meadow, but also get them to where we're. So we'll spend, I think, early June, we're going to go out and go out in the field and see if there's any opportunities we can do.
And Jenny, because I don't know, where's Trapper?
Trapper Cabin. So SQ Meadows. So up at French Creek, it's about south of Kluchman Saddle, and then north of Victor Creek Trailhead. So right before you get the summit, but not the road up there. So if you go down that 260 road, so it's close to the summit.
Yes, it's the second. There's one turn off past it before you hit the summit, you know? It's just
Okay.
almost to the summit. Yeah, go back in there about 2 or 3 miles.
I'll tell you, I don't like the word decommission, so you know where I'm at.
Go in there and look at that cabin.
I honestly think I've been in there on a horse, but it's 30 years ago. Yeah.
Yep. It's pretty neat, and Ed spent a lot of time working on that trapper cabin since it was destroyed at one point. So I'm going to use decommission again, but this is a different one. So Upper Payette Lake, there's an old spring box up there. So we're actually going to pull the spring box. So we're going to decommission. So we're going to pull it out and then rehab that area. We don't use it anymore. But
Is that for sheep?
That's different. That's not.
That was for the sheep, wasn't it?
No, I think it was for the campground, but it's just old. It's outdated. We don't use it anymore, so we'll pull that. And it'll be essentially dealing with the safety issues. Yep. And that's it that I have. So any other questions?
Nope, I think we're good.
So before we get into fire, I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
So I have heard that there's going to be volunteers on the forest this summer from ICL, tracking numbers with the potential of creating more wilderness and decommissioning trails. I have great concern with that we are taking one environmental group and we're allowing them to make decisions on the forest. I think that's inappropriate. So I will strongly stand against that and talk against it any moment I can. We need fair and balance somewhere, because I am a recreationist and that's my forest too. And I don't like having one voice on the forest. Going back, so.
What's your take on that, Jenny or Dave? Is that actually happening?
Yeah, I could look into it a little bit more and get more specifics, but I'm pretty sure it's in the parts in the forest plan that are the recommended wilderness areas in the South Fork.
Mhm.
And
It's a little bit more than that. So
Okay.
that's we're working in partnership with Idaho Conservation League to do like a stewardship program, and they're doing a bunch of different things. And it's not just recommended wilderness. In fact, I kind of found out about it offhanded, and from my standpoint, I was like, "Oh, great! Can you help with maybe some of the roadless stuff?" So it's trying to look at. We don't have a lot of backcountry rangers, so it's just looking at some of that stuff and providing information. I don't think it's not slanted in my respect, though. I haven't seen the kind of the surveys they're doing, but we should. I think that's a good point, Sherry. Is look at what kind of survey protocol.
I would like to see that.
Yeah.
You've got a bunch of groups up here that the recommended wilderness at this moment in time is recommended, and you're getting a lot of input on that. So if you're only getting input on one side of that conversation, I think that's inappropriate for the future. I mean, I think we all need a voice of what happens here. I'm looking at our future recreation plan, and if all of a sudden we lose a large portion of our recreation opportunity, that impacts us, Valley County. It impacts our recreation, our tourist economy, that hits us hard. And so having just one conversation, I'm very concerned with.
Well, one of the things I've noticed is you can call it whatever you want to call it, but people are still going to go in there and use it and abuse it and do what they want to do on it. And I'm on the Roadless Commission, and it's amazing some of the things that we've been involved with that. And, a lot of control burns. I think we figured about 500,000 acres a year throughout the state. And when there's going to be a lot of smoke different times of year that I think the public's going to go, we don't want this. We'll see how it works.
With that,
I agree with Sherry. I think I deal a lot with Jonathan Oppenheimer and those guys. And I think they have a great intent. I think their intent is honorable. But I think publicly it's, you guys need to think about what kind of perception are we putting out there when we have one group like that come in and give us all the input and stuff. Doesn't look very good. That's what I've noticed.
I think a balanced approach, then we can all work together, but they have a specific mission to fulfill. And there's a whole flip side of that mission right, that also needs to be heard from.
And they should be working for us, and I think that's a good point. Like you said, we should look and see what the protocols they're using. And, you know, we work with a lot of different volunteer organizations, like Idaho Trails Association has done surveys for us. I think Citra is now starting to do surveys. So we, in all honesty, we'll take anybody we get, you know, to help us with getting information. And they're not making decisions for us. They are just providing information, but I think looking at those forms.
Like, see what the survey says, that'd be
Yeah.
great.
And, I could email what I find, or I can come back at, an upcoming meeting and get back to you. I mean, I can go either way.
Whatever works for you. We can do a Zoom too and Zoom in.
Okay.
So we're supposed to have a Southwest RAC come into place. Have you guys heard anything about the formation of the RAC that was supposed to be done by the end of first quarter?
I'd have to look back at my notes of what
Yeah.
Brian told us.
Okay. I'll reach out to Brian and ask.
Yeah, if you would.
We've been waiting a couple of years for a rep.
We're still using our old ones, but we need to move forward and just get it
Yes.
refurbished and, you know, and get it back in place.
You would think the Nationals would give you guys more authority over that.
Well, we were told that if it went to a desk and it wasn't signed in 30 days, it became automatic. I don't know if that has changed, but we were told that clear back, and it was probably November, December. So that thing was supposed to have been in place already. And then my last question, and then we'll move on because I think you're doing firefighting. I want to look into the Title III funds that we receive. So Title III, I just need a contact, if it's you guys or if it's USDA or what is that? Because we have a lot of money sitting in there right now. And we're using it for small things, but you know, we need to figure out what those funds are meant to do. And one of the things that I'm really interested in is there's a training conversation in that statute where, you know, I want to see, can we train the firefighters, search and rescue on the forest protocols? Are we already doing that? And I don't know about it. And then also it talks about payroll reimbursement. Anytime firefighters go in, our sheriff's department goes in for an incident, that we are reimbursed, or that we can be reimbursed for payroll expenses out of that. We're trying to find funding for our EMS district. And if we're providing, you know, support and we can take it out of that Title III funds, that's really what I'm trying to figure out. So I don't know if it's you guys I talk to or, if, you know, who oversees that program.
I'll get back to you.
That'd be
Yeah, I
great.
don't know. I mean, let's one of you guys know right off.
Brian
immediately who
Harris
it
has
is,
been the one
but-
that we've been working through because there have been some suggestions about possibly looking at snowmobiles for the Avalanche Center. And so there was a little snippet about Title III funds, and I have not. And Brian Harris seemed to be the no person, but we can certainly.
Yeah, I
follow
mean,
up.
that's where I'd start
Yeah.
with, and if he said, I'm not the guy, or if here's the person he thinks, I'd still could follow up and say, here was the questions, are you really gonna be responsive, and if so, then I'll get you in touch with that person.
That'd be perfect. I know Brian well, too, so we can reach out, that's fine.
No, and one of the things that we're discussing, and we still haven't worked in our budget yet, but we're trying to convince our sheriff's department to offer a couple more positions for recreation deputies. And there may be a possibility that if they're doing some enforcement on national forest, we can use Title III funds to help maintenance. It's things like that, little things. I know we did buy a UTV and a snowmobile for search and rescue this year. We bought a trailer with some of those funds. And that group is kind of going through some morphing. We lost our main guy on that here last winter, and so we're trying to rebuild that program. And let's support you guys and support us too. So
We did just buy a snowmobile for Cascade Fire too, so they're gonna be, you know, they'll track what they're using it for on the forest, but we are trying to upgrade some equipment.
and most of that will be for the yellow pine runs. EMS goes out to yellow pine quite a bit. I think we can use some of that, but it's pretty restricted when you start reading the law. It's like you can't use it in a lot of places.
And we need to be able to. We gotta figure out what the law really says. Oh, it can be.
Some late night reading. So
Okay,
Dave,
it's all
you're up
mine for now.
next.
All right, can I give you guys?
Yep, come on up. We were just talking about this morning. Are we ever gonna have like our annual spring firefighting meeting, or where are we on that? Here we are.
Here we are. Commissioner Allen, sorry, I didn't know you were gonna be remote, or I would have tried to get you this package. It's just some kind of basic information, but there is a seasonal outlook there, and I guess if I had your email, I could send it to you. And
I'll scan it and email it to him.
okay, awesome, thank you. So we'll just kick it right off again. My name's Dave Vining, and I'm the new fire staff officer on the Payette National Forest. And we were
What?
talking
Say
earlier.
say your name again. I missed that.
David Vining.
Vining?
Yeah, Vining.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ed, I'm gonna send you his spreadsheet, so it's got his contact information on it.
All right, thank you.
Yep. And so Sean Johnson was in this position before and he retired. So that's who he used to come around. We've had lots of, well, first of all, for me, I've worked for the Forest Service or the BLM since about 1993. I've been on the Payette since 2004. So I started down in council in the Council Ranger District, and then I was the FMO for McCall and New Meadows. And then I got this position. So been here for a while and worked on lots of different parts of the forest. So I feel pretty comfortable kind of knowing the places and the people and the things that need to be done. But I am new in my position, so I'm drinking through a fire hose, as they say right now. So still doing lots of learning and figuring it out. I hired a new deputy fire staff. That used to be Rod Dines, and he left. And we hired Tom Schultz, and he was the FMO on the East Zone. So he used to work for Dave. He's been around for a long time. Worked on the Salmon Chalice and the Nez Clearwater in here. He's new into his position, but he also knows the forest really well. We hired Patrick Shawn for our forest fuels planner. He replaced Dustin Doan, and he too has been on the Payette for a long time. And then we hired a new smoke jumper base manager, Todd Haynes, and he's been at the jump program for 20 plus years. So that's a lot of new people on my staff. So we're all, like I said, learning a lot. We've all been on the Payette for quite a while, so we have a good understanding of the communities around here and the fuel type and our type of fires we have. So I feel good about that, but we are new. So we hired from within, so of course all those jobs were vacant, and so we were hiring other people. And two important positions that are new. Brian Bush is the FMO for McCall and New Meadows. He was my AFMO before, so he just kind of moved up into my position. Brian's been here for about a decade, knows the ground and the people really well. And then Forrest Bame, he was on the call here for a little bit, but Forrest is the FMO on the East Zone, so kind of the Crassel District, working for Dave. And Forrest has worked on the Payette for 30 years, I think, long time. So he's a really good hand and he's really knowledgeable. So it's good to have him here. Kind of with that, our resources are pretty much the same as they've been. We have all the smoke jumpers, all of our helicopters coming back. We have our engines and our hand crews. It's all basically the same as it's been in the past, 5 years, 7 years. So that's good. We have changed some tours. You were asking before the meeting. And so like the module leaders, kind of the engine captains, those will be permanent full-time employees.
Okay.
And then everyone else will be, they call them 18 and 8. So out of 26 pay periods in a year, they're working 18, which is an increase from 13 pay periods. And then of course we still have a temp workforce that we hire for kind of summer, for the peak of our summer season. And that's come about just from the length of the fire seasons we're getting nowadays. Like I said, we have people down in Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado right now, and there'll be people in California until the holidays. and then we have our fire season in the middle. So it's just a lot going on, and a lot of fire season, and a lot of fuels work to be done. So that's been the kind of reason for increasing those tours. Let's see here. So that kind of covers a lot on the first page. We still have a SIPA dispatcher and dispatch this year. And there is a new kind of a fire department over in Washington County. It's a Rural Fire Protection Association got stood up. It was kind of right there where the Woodhead fire burnt, if you remember, on the road going out to Brownlee. And so that's pretty exciting because they're covering a bunch of ground that has not had fire protection in the past. So they're brand new, and we're going to work with them real close to be, good partners and figure out how to work together. And it was pretty exciting. They did a fire school the other day, and they had 40 people show up to that down there.
Wow.
So it was a lot.
That's awesome.
Were they following the SIPA kind of funding and all that stuff, They have a
It's a little different. They started RFPAs about 5 years ago, I believe, and around in Boise, there's a couple different RFPAs, and it is kind of the same. It's Rural or Rangeland Fire Protection Association, but I don't know if they receive much funding from the state. It's a more volunteer type of program.
Well, hopefully they'll get to the point where they can assess a timber assessments like SIPA does.
Yeah.
Because you need solid funding.
Yep.
You don't have the solid funding, people kind of,
Yeah.
like a volunteer fire department, every year there's different volunteers.
Right. And I think being in a kind of an official status, they can get excess equipment and get grants, and they can go and, they can get a lot more being an association versus, our ranchers have always been, really involved when they have fire, right? Putting out a fire. And this just makes it kind of an official thing. They have radios, state issued them radios. We'll be able to talk. We're training together. They'll be able to get better equipment, and it'll just make it a better program. So it's a good deal. No, it's not Valley County, but it does help for the greater Payette National Forest, having those type of partners.
David, a question real quick. It kind of came up a little bit this morning in one of our other discussions. Do you have any? You do a lot of cooperation with the local fire departments as far as wildland fire training and that kind of stuff. I know that some people used to do that.
So, we do. I have a cooperators meeting this week with kind of Washington, Adams County. We are part of the Valley County Working Group, and we have several committees under that. Like the response subcommittee is the big one that we work together doing wildland fire. And that response subcommittee generally tries to put together a training every spring to make sure we're all, using the same radios and working together. It's kind of fallen off the table a little bit with COVID. The last 2 years is kind of the excuse for everything, right? But it was very difficult to get people together to train, and it is something they're working on, trying to get something pulled together this spring to do that. So yeah, we try our best. Valley County's great because they actually have some paid employees, and SIPA is excellent also. So it makes it easier to get together and train. Our volunteer fire departments, it's harder. They have full-time jobs usually, and it's hard to get together and do
I'm
that.
gonna tell you over and over, we're structural, we're not range.
Right, and really,
We hear that all the time.
and I believe in Valley County right now, Cascade maybe is the only one that's an official wildland fire. They all do it, of course. Donnelly will respond to fire, McCall, and Yellow Pine, but I think Cascade is the only ones that are official that get tax revenue to do wildland fire. So Steve Hull works real close with the Chief Hull with Boise National Forest out of Cascade, but yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna move on. So I just had some talking points on that next sheet, and so that first bullet's is just risk management. And basically, right now there's just a lot of discussion about risk management in wildland fire, and it's been going on for a while. And the way it kind of fits in is how we respond to fire, right? But we get a fire in the landscape, we're going to take a risk management approach. Like, can we IA aggressively catch it as small as possible? Or is it in the middle of a snag patch in a rock pile and we're going to have a hard time getting people there, and how we're going to manage that? And it's just part of that discussion that we don't want to hurt or kill anyone trying to put out a fire, that we shouldn't be trying to do that, or figuring out a different way of doing it that's less risky for the job. It's really nothing new. We've been doing it a long time, and we've been practicing this. But if you hear that risk management, that's kind of what we're talking about. The next one is our people, workforce, and the environment. So we were pretty successful hiring this year. I would say we're right now probably 95% full, which is great. The Sam and Chalice the other day told me they were about 60% capacity. So we feel really lucky to be where we're at right now in hiring.
Maybe that everybody came to visit in the last 2 years and decided they want a job here.
Yeah. You know, it was good. We had a lot smaller applicant pools. So for our jobs, we used to get 100 people apply. Now we're getting about 10 or 20. You know, it's just much smaller, and it's the same problems as everywhere, and everyone has, or the housing, cost of living, pay. It's just a hard time right now to find people that want to work in fire, or probably really in anything. So we're working through that. The forest has been trying to partner with some of the larger businesses to figure out the housing problem, and we'll keep working on trying to recruit good employees and get them into the community. Okay, so the next bullet there, the cohesive strategy. So we've been involved in the cohesive strategy for about 10 years. And so that is create fire-adapted communities, restoring forest health by reducing fire risk, and increase effective fire response, right? So it's kind of the framework for how we're all going to work together and live with fire, or figure out how to protect our communities. And it's a good foundation. And then underneath that, to kind of meet the cohesive strategy, we have some tools like the Good Neighbor Authority to help us do work on the forest. And we've been utilizing Idaho in the Good Neighbor Authority here for a few years. And it's been great. They've been able to help us out a bunch and get a bunch of work done. The change there is they're now willing to help us do just fuels work. So we do a lot of non-commercial thinning, which is, thin the understory of the forest. You have to lay it out and put contracts out and get contractors and inspect it. The Idaho GNA is planning on hiring a new individual to help do that work for us, at least part of that work.
Lynn retired.
What's that?
Lynn retired.
Lynn is going to retire. He's our shared stewardship guy, but which is too bad. Lynn's
Very capable guy.
Yep. So we have Good Neighbor Authority, shared stewardship, so we can work across lines, right? We can work together on private, state, federal land, and we all work together to do what's right on the landscape, which is awesome. And then the new one is the confronting the wildfire crisis. And I don't know if you guys have heard of this.
So is this out of the Governors Association? The Western Governors Association is really highlighting wildfire this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's everywhere. It's from the national office, the White House, the governors. It's really high up on everyone's radar, as it should be. I mean, the past 2 fire seasons have been just outrageous.
We're spending so much money on fighting fires when we should be spending it on cleaning it up in the first place so that they don't
Yep.
burn.
So
There's a lot of timber in Idaho that's not really salvageable. It's really not that great at timbering. I look at that stuff around Deadwood Reservoir, especially on the west side, and I'm thinking, one of these years, it's just gonna go to scorched earth and all that problem will go away. Little tiny stuff.
like a bunch of lodgepole. Yeah. So the wildfire crisis, they want to treat 20 million acres of National Forest System lands and 30 million acres of other fed, state, and tribal and private lands, and then develop maintenance. So it's a strategy to do all this work on the landscape to restore the forest health and reduce fire risk. Okay, that's great. It's a really good thing. And so then we're like, okay, how are we going to do this? Well, the infrastructure bill passed, right? And that's a huge funding stream to do work on the ground to help fund part of the wildfire crisis strategy. And so the Boise and the Payette National Forest was selected as we're the only project in Region 4 and 1 in 10 in the nation. And it's called the Southwest Idaho Landscape, SIL. And it's basically runs up the Highway 95 corridor, comes through McCall, and kind of wraps out around north of Council. And it's I think the total acreage is 1.7 million, and of that, million acres is forest, and the rest of it's private state land.
Highway 55?
Highway 55. I'm sorry, did I say 95?
95.
Yep. So 55, and so we got selected to do this big project, and the goal on that project is to treat between 20 and 30% of the land base in the next 10 years. So if you said 1 million acres of Forest Service land, that's 200 to 300,000 acres of treatment. And those treatments, that's everything, right? Logging, non-commercial thinning, prescribed fire, mastication, all of the tools that we have, that we're going to have to use them all. And we're not going to increase our capacity to that level. And so we're going to use the Idaho GNA. We're trying to create a partnership with the Nature Conservancy to come help us do work. We have agreements with the BLM that's going to come help, the Southern Idaho Timber Protection Association, potentially the counties. The Valley County and Adams County has programs to help reduce fuels. Like Adams County has a chipper and a chipper crew, and so we might try to fund them to do work on county roads within the forest, and that helps do that work. And we're just starting to talk about how we could partner with Valley County to see if their capacity could help us out.
Honestly, I think our biggest issue with our program is the fact that so many of the private land has to be within 1.5 miles of forest in order to qualify. And we have too many folks that just a little bit and they don't qualify. If we could figure out a way to change some of those standards, I think we could get a lot more done up here. In my area, especially down the end of the valley, I'm probably 2 miles from the nearest forest boundary. So a lot of the stuff in the Clear Creek, Red Fox, Herrick Reservoir, they don't qualify. Too far away. I talked to Stephanie about it, see what we could do. Is there any way we could get an exemption to that rule, or can we change the rule, or what? But we have a lot of opportunity, but those are some of the restrictions. Steph has done a phenomenal job. We have a program on now where landowners can get up to $500 to clean up their lot, and that's been huge. It took off like crazy, but there's no restriction from how close you are to forest to do that project.
So the grant money you're getting to do the work with, that's what's restricting you.
Restricting it.
Okay.
Something to think about if you're in that position, you make a change, or that would help.
Yeah, I'll have to talk to Lynn a little bit about the shared stewardship program, because there is potential we could figure out how to help fund that with an agreement to do work beyond that mile and a half. Because we could treat the forest. If we don't treat the private property and around the homes, it's not. We have to do it all to be successful. So that's the goal. And I'm not sure if I haven't got any word if there's more money through state and private forestry for the counties. I'm sure there's going to, because 30 million acres of other federal, state, and private lands, that money has to come through some avenue to get that work done. So it's pretty exciting. It's a little overwhelming. It's going to be a lot of work, and we realize it's going to be an impact to everyone, right? We're going to treat that much of the landscape. It's going to impact our rec people, because we're going to be out banging around in the woods and could impact our permittees because when we do non-commercial thin, sometimes it's hard for the cattle to get through until we get that burnt. And then when we're burning, there's smoke impacts. You know, it's just going to be a lot, and figuring out how to do as much work as we can with as minimal impact to the public. But there will be some, and you know, we just have to communicate and try to stay ahead of that, and you know, keep gaining support to do the work on landscape, because we don't want a 1 million acre fire on the pit.
I was gonna say, we either manage it and put up with that, or else we lose it all.
That's
in
right.
One massive fire.
We've had our large fires. You guys were around in 2007. I think 500,000 acres on the pit. That's, you know, it's like the wildfire crisis after what's happened in California and the Oregon and Washington the past 2 years. Those were huge fires. It's crazy, but Central Idaho has been in a crisis for a while.
We've actually
Yeah,
been lucky.
that started like in about 1987.
Yeah,
I was here through a lot of those. 94, Jenny was here too during that period of time. And yeah, we've had, in the backcountry, if you go east of here, there's a lot of fairly well protected areas now. And so I have a couple of questions I wanted to put, David. And one of the things, and you mentioned smoke, and there's a lot of stuff, you know, we're trying to clean up a lot of area, and that's a big project you guys are in, but it does have other impacts. There's a couple of things. One of them is the closures and stuff that happen in the summer. So, you know, as you all know, we're a highly desirable place for people to come, and a lot of times the fire teams will show up and decide to close half the forest off, you know, and sometimes it's not, you know, downwind and things like that. And I don't know if you have any kind of control at the local level, at the ranger district or even the forest level on some of that kind of stuff, but just going forward, that is a huge impact to the recreational community, that kind of stuff when you do have large fires. And maybe to draw those boundaries with a little more judiciously maybe than I've seen a couple times in the past. Anyway, that's just a standpoint, one of the things. And from one other thing, do you have on the smoke, do you guys use any kind of burning, smoke dispersal parameters when you do your prescribed burning? I know last year Highway 55 was pretty much shut down for a while because of one of your fires, and then we have the same situation. We're creating a lot of fuel, and then whenever it becomes, I guess, possible to burn, you know, the rest of the year is almost unbearable sometimes, the smoke and stuff. So do you have any kind of things that you work with, like you have any center that gives you a go, no go on burns and that kind of thing for that particular purpose?
so for the first one, the closures, I completely agree with you, and we're always fighting that. So we have to put our closures through our law enforcement side, and they always want to make them really big so they don't have to redo it, you know, when the fire grows, because it is kind of a workload to do. So we're always kind of pushing back, trying to keep it as small as possible. And then, you know, sometimes we take it out to a point because that's the easiest place to close it, like at a trailhead, versus 2 miles into a trail. We have done that too. It just takes more communication. Like you have to really sign that trailhead and let people know you can go 2 miles and it's closed and you have to turn around and come back. But those are some of the things that go into that. But I agree. Sometimes see some of these fires and the closures are huge. And I think the line officers, the district rangers are really in tune to that. I know Dave works hard, especially out in the wilderness, to keep as much open as possible. And then the second one, so we go through a bunch of different approvals with smoke, the state DEQ and the Idaho Montana Airshed Coordinator. So we propose a burn, you know, usually a day or 2 days before, and they do the smoke modeling and look at the weather, look who else is burning around us, and then give us kind of a go, no go if we should burn or not. And then, you know, every day our forecast, they try to forecast the dispersion of smoke. it is, they're right a lot, but sometimes they're wrong. Sometimes we have really good dispersion and we burn and it just settles right into the valley. It's kind of like predicting the weather. It's very difficult at times. So it is something that we're really hyper aware of because it is lately, we burn in the spring and there's smoke, and then we have smoke all summer from, especially we have fires to the west of us, and then we burn in the fall. And so it is something we're really aware of, and we try to break up our burns. So maybe we'll burn out in the South Fork one day, and then Weezer the next, and then McCall, and then try to keep it in different places. Sometimes that works out, and sometimes it doesn't. And then, some of our burns, we get a lot of residual smoke. We burn it one day, and then it's a bunch of old stumps and logs, and those burn for several days, and they keep kind of smoking. And then we have other burns that maybe it's our second or third entry that it burns the needles and the sticks, and then it kind of goes out. And that's where we would love to be, is if our forest could do that, where we could go burn it, there's smoke for a day, and then there's no more smoke. But we're a long ways from that. Yeah.
Well, I'm fully sympathetic with you because I know how tough it is to prescribe burn. But anyway, just thought, we have you mentioned one that's very key is that we have 3 smoke seasons, and I personally am trying to avoid the 4th one. So anyway, just working on those kind of things. On one other question, do you have any? Do you guys? I know we keep talking about how hard it is to get people here. Do you have cost of living considerations in any of the regions nowadays? I know that it used to be that if you were going to transfer to, say, Southern California, you got something like a quarter add on to your salary to compensate for that. And it almost seems like we're in a situation here that way in this Valley County, particularly McCall.
Yeah, I agree. I think the last time OPM looked at COLAs was in the 80s. And that's when they did that. And I don't know if there's anyone looking at doing that again, kind of looking at all the communities and see which one needs a cost of living adjustment or not. Yeah, but I agree. That's it's just getting very difficult to live, particularly in McCall.
I'm guessing they're never gonna do it.
That's what would be my guess.
Yeah, because that's.
Well, anyway, it
really,
was at one time consideration.
Yeah.
There's places where you can find a place to live.
Well, and I think one of the things that we're finding is across the board, any forest community, it has a high cost of living. So, and that's one of the things that we're finding is everybody, across the region, you talk to all the forests and they're having struggles with people being able to find housing, being able to afford it. So it's, we're not alone in this, which is kind of, I'm not sure how well the cost of living.
Honestly, I think our biggest issue statewide is the Airbnbs. Because these are so profitable now that people are gonna buy a house and Airbnb it forever. And I think it's really messed up our employee life. Driven up salaries, it's not good, but you talk to those legislators and they don't want to change that. In fact, they passed some legislation here a couple of years ago that you don't touch Airbnbs.
Yeah.
We can register them, which is what we're in the process of doing now in Valley County, just to know who they are. And we can get after them if they are over occupied, too many folks for the septic system, but that's about as far as we get to go. And those guys all own 2 or 3 or 4. And all of a sudden, owning a house is a very profitable business. My feeling is I think we need to value them differently than a normal residence.
Yeah, they're a commercial enterprise.
It's a commercial enterprise, and we should get some of that revenue. But
Okay, just 1 or 2 other little questions, and maybe it would be better to wait till the end. But one of them came up during, I think, his Jenny's presentation is kind of getting hammered a little bit about getting a special interest group involved in major decisions on the forest. And I want to say I know that special interest groups have not made these decisions in the past. So maybe it's a perception thing. You know, when something like that happens, that, you know, you send up a red flag that, well, you know, we got tree huggers out here, you know, deciding how to manage things. So, any case, that was the only comment, and I certainly don't want. You guys got a tough job. I've been there. I know what you're up against, and yeah, you know. So, and I'm a total supporter of public lands.
Well, and that's why the coalitions were formed, is so that everybody had a voice. And I think the challenge now is
Yeah, we're
retaining
just
folks.
anyway. I think it's a little bit unfair to jump on you, but you know, to assume that you're just going to grab onto some special interest group and make major decisions. So I don't believe that would be your intention at all. So anyway, one other question for the fire folks. We had a question came up this morning on another discussion about when we get back to this debris, trying to get rid of this debris. Over the years, we've talked a lot about trying to get involved in, you know, biomass plants and things like that. Or we recognize it's an issue, and it's become more and more of an issue with all the money flowing in to get to do these projects. You know, these thinning and fire-wise projects. So one of the things that we've recognized here is we've got the same kind of issue. They bring it to our dump, and it gets really big, and then we have to get rid of it. Seems like a lot of fuel going up in the smoke when it maybe should be going someplace else. Well, the idea came up with a possibility of talking about maybe a combined effort with different agencies and counties to do something like maybe a grinder chipper program, something on that order. Is anybody thinking about that in the Forest Service organization?
You know, part of our timber sale contracts when we were doing some shared stewardship included grinding, you know, the landing piles, and then I think they were going to the mill to burn for power. But other than that, I haven't heard much, you know, work going towards other, you know, purchasing any type of apparatus to do that. We do have masticator heads for engineering, and they do a bunch of road maintenance with those instead of other means. But I haven't heard of anything else going on about purchasing any type of big grinders.
But you mentioned in Adams County they have a chipper. How are they managing that? Do you have any idea?
You know, I think that's part of how they're using some of their funds that they get. They just purchased a chipper, and they hire employees to utilize it.
So do you know, Dave, is that like a contract, or are they county employees?
I think they're county employees, and it might be the Title III funds. I'm not sure.
Anyway, that would be a good one.
Next week, and I'll talk to him about it. See how they do.
Yeah,
one of the issues
we
we had
brought
was
that up. I'm sorry.
we have wood at biomass at the landfill. You control. They tell us when to burn, all that kind of stuff, and it's not working out for either one of us. So we've talked about. Well, actually, this year Jerry Icola is going to come in starting today.
Oh yeah,
and chip that pile for us. And it's $35,000 to $50,000 a year.
Yeah.
I can't even find one employee for that. You know, you think about trying to set up that whole program, we need somebody else in the game that can keep that machine working the rest of the time.
Yeah, regionally, it's just something that seems to me like no one's going to resolve that, say, an individual entity. It's just maybe there's got to be some start someplace on kind of coming up with a regional process of utilize this stuff more. I guess environmentally sensitive, and maybe return it to the land.
Well, I'll reach out to our natural resource staff officer and see if they've been talking about that. It was a big push there for a while, you know, talking about biochar and chip and biomass burners for schools, and then I just haven't heard much about it for a while. So I'll have to do some poking around.
Hey, appreciate that. I know you probably don't need anything else to put on your plate, so but anyway, it's an issue.
I didn't know what I was going to do this afternoon anyway. Well, that's kind of. Oh no, I had an outlook. Jeez, you guys are. This usually only takes me 30 minutes.
They're telling the soil conservation saying we're 93%.
So that one's from the 14th of April. That the one chart you're looking at, and so since
The last storm.
the last storm has helped, the one I had in the 1st of April was even worse. We were about 60%, and it was really concerning because it didn't look like we were going to get any weather. And so April's really helped out our snowpack and our water year for sure.
Well, one of the discussions that's come up lately last week was cloud seeding. Idaho Power, does a lot of cloud seeding, and they're looking for some more possibilities here in Valley County to do more cloud seeding. And I think it's pretty reasonable, but I know some of the hearings in the past, people were concerned about silver nitrate that they shoot up in the air and what that was doing to the environment, to wildlife, and all that kind of stuff. I think since then they've kind of figured out it's just like any other dust particle, really. But I think that's an opportunity that we need to exploit up here in this area. They used to have ground systems, and they were fairly reasonable systems to put up together. I think they were $14,000-15,000, and then you had propane every year. Now they do it aerial with plane. It's a whole different cost, whole different system. But to me, I think we should be doing that all over the West. Makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I know I'm over time, so you guys have that outlook and you can just look through it. The key is we're going to be in a long-term drought again. It's going to be hot. It's going to be dry. We're expecting another busy fire season, and we're going to staff up for that. And we'll bring folks in when we need to, and we'll keep using our neighbors when we need to, and working together. The other part of that package is the chief's letter. And I don't need to cover that. You guys can read it. It's just the letter to the Forest Service with his expectations on how we're going to manage fire on the forest system lands. So,
Good letter. I like it reading them. Kind of gives
yeah.
a real feeling of how everybody feels about this. Larry had a question for you guys.
Yeah. Surprise. Thanks, guys, for coming. First of all, I'm looking forward to
Larry,
discussing
you
grant.
in the mic, so.
Yeah, Larry Laxon, Valley County Parks and Rec. I'm looking forward to discussing that Granite Meadows with you, and I'm looking forward to seeing the East Fork stuff come out. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm just curious when you're talking about your engines, and I had this discussion last year. Is there a chance you could remind those guys that when they're driving around up on the forest to look for hazard trees and take them off the roadside? Because we're getting a lot of hazard trees. And last year I watched them drive by a couple, and I just kind of, it was good training. They can get out and take them down and mark it off, check it off. It's training. So if you don't mind, I certainly appreciate that.
Yeah, they generally do that, if they're paying attention. But,
And I do
it
understand that,
is a
but
good
for
training.
some-
Maybe they're saving it for firewood later when they come back. Or something, I don't know, but yeah.
Or they can just tell us where they are so we can go get them.
Yeah, will do.
Thank
We'll
you.
pass it on.
Appreciate
If I had one more question too, I noticed that you guys are gonna, the offset acres agreement is up this year. Do you think some dramatic changes there? Is it gonna be about the same? We went through this once on SIPA and it was
So they are talking the new master agreement. It was a bullet on my deal. That actually expired in December, but they extended it for a year.
Okay.
And they're right in the middle of negotiating. The master agreement, the offset's just one part of it. It's how we have all sorts of agreements with people, but the offset is definitely the issue right now in how that's going to look. And we'll just see. There's an executive session this week to kind of discuss how it's going to look, and then we'll go from there to build the offset. They're dealing with that at the regional level, so I'm not really even involved until they go, okay, here are the rules. You guys go figure it out on the ground what it's going to look like to you. But I could foresee change in it for the next 5 years, for sure. But I don't know until hopefully after this week we'll know something. But
Well, part of the argument we had with them last time was the fact that, look, I was the SIPA back then.
yeah,
We have the staff, we have the equipment, we have the people here. Forest Service doesn't, so why don't you give us those acres? It worked out pretty well. He was a ranger back then for us. Shoot, he wanted to go blank. Anyway, it was a pretty sticky thing, but we negotiated. Sean was involved with some of it too, and it ended up working out great. And I guess my only thought is just, I think SIPA's a huge
oh yeah.
asset, and make sure you give them enough ground. They got some business.
Yeah, SIPA is one of our, they are our biggest cooperator, and they're great. They're great to work with. They actually have equipment that we don't have, and we have equipment that they don't have. So we actually work together really well. And they're always willing to help us out when we need help, and we help them out. And it's been a really good relationship, and we definitely want to maintain that. Like I said, I think they negotiated at a higher level so we don't lose the relationships on the ground. And I kind of appreciate that in a way, but then we're also in a vacuum and we don't know what's going on until they tell us this is what's going on. But I've been talking with Paul and Rich Stiles, the SIPA guys, every week. What are you hearing? And tell them what I'm hearing, and we're making plans, and we'll work together no matter what happens.
Well, I wish they'd give that responsibility back to the Rangers and you guys locally. We don't need to do it on a regional level. Let's keep it local and let those guys.
And
They're the ones that are out there. They know what they got and what they don't have.
And that might be an option, right? That the master agreement will just give us these different tools, and then at the local area, we'll decide how to do it. Like offset, or we'll pay each other for service, or we'll do mutual aid. That is one of the options they're talking about. I just don't know if it's the one they're going to choose or not.
Well, I think SIPA can work with about any of them,
Yeah,
really. Those guys are so good on initial attack.
oh yeah.
But, the hard thing telling those guys is, look, if it gets away from you, back off and all the big guys in. Get the big guns in, because this is beyond our scope.
Yeah.
They don't want to do that.
No.
Well, to convince them that this fire is way too big for this group.
Yeah, they've been great.
Good. Thanks you guys very much for coming in. David, keep us in the loop on anything you need from us. I, like Larry, am very interested in the South Fork ramp and how that's all gonna turn out. We'll see where it goes.
Okay.
And have a great day.
Thank you.
Okay?
Next time.
Sorry for going late.
It's all right. Doug has nothing to do with this. So at this time, Doug, I will adjourn the meeting.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you being here as well.
We'll see everybody back there next week.
Say hi to Vicky and the rest of our old friends.